Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Origins, shared screen show where we bring in a guest and then talk about the games that turn gaming from a hobby into a passion. Before we get started, I just want to quick apologize for missing last month. Some personal things just happened last month, and between the holidays and that, last month just kind of got away from me, so didn't have time to make an episode last month. And if you're listening to this within the first few weeks of when this uploads, there's still time to get your limited time merch of This Is the Waypoint themed after the Book of Boba Fett. So click that link below to get some of that merch. Without further ado, let's get into Origins.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Chris LaPack, aka RoboPack92, and this is my episode of Origins. Now, I've never traditionally actually really loved the question of what's the game that turned you into a gamer. It's something that gets thrown around on Twitter a lot, and I see it go through every now and then, and I'm just like, I can't nail down just one. I think that personally, at least for me, there's a lot of things that all kind of contributed into creating the love that I have for video games today. But when I really think about it, there are two games that stand out very, very well. One of them, I'm sure, if you've already followed me before or even watched shared screens content, you could probably guess, and that's the Halo series. Shocker, I know. But the other one is also a game from around the same time as the original Halo and Halo 2, and that's Super Smash Bros. Melee. I think both of these games have sort of pushed me into at least the thought process that kind of shapes the way that I view other games, just because these are the two games that have cultivated the most relationships for me. They've been constants in my life since they all came out. There's a lot that's kind of going on here. So, as you've probably heard me say before, let's talk about some Halo. So, as far as my history with Halo, I think it's something I've actually talked about here on shared screens before, so I'll kind of give you the Cliff Notes version. But I'm at day one. My dad actually picked up an Xbox on launch day, or technically we had to pick it up and send it to him because he was overseas because he's in the military, and it was 2001. Enough said. So we had to send it to him, and when he gets home, finally, after being deployed for a few months, he comes back. One of the first things that he says to me, he's like, "Hey, you know how y'all sent me that Xbox?" I go, "Yeah, of course I remember that, Dad. It was a new game console that I had to mail to you and didn't get to play it all." And then he goes, "You have to play this game." And so I was like, "What game? What is it? I don't know what you're talking about." And he, we go home. He unpacks his stuff, sets up the Xbox on our big giant CRT that we had in our living room. The thing was like 90 pounds. And loads up the second level of the original Halo game, called Halo, funny enough. And this is a pretty ubiquitous experience, I think, for a lot of people that play Halo for the first time, especially the original one back in 01. Although technically, I think at this point it would have been early 02 for me. Seeing a first-person shooter on the console was pretty rare. GoldenEye kind of took the first steps for that on N64, and Perfect Art perfected that a little bit. But FPSs were still uncommon on console for a long time. Just it was always considered to be sort of a PC thing. How do you get shooters to work well on a controller? Because there's so many things that makes aiming look weird. Halo fixed all of that. They pared down everything so to where you typically only have two guns. Like most FPSs were like, here, I have every gun, and you can switch between all of them, or there's a wheel. You look at Doom and Quake, and even GoldenEye actually allowed you to carry like 8 guns or something. And so they balanced everything around the multiplayer itself, and then they drop you into this big wide open area. Huge. It's one of the largest environments that I had ever seen in a video game at that point. That was that first moment as a child, to where I remember thinking to myself, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I can't believe video games can do something like this, where it's not just that's kind of the point where it pushed past for me of just being like a fun thing to go do. It felt like a true narrative, like there was a proper story here, that it wasn't a video game, if you know what I mean. This felt like something special, and man, did it feel good to play at the time. It's real slippery now. real slippery now. I'd say it probably I don't think the first Halo game is held up as well as the rest of the series, but there's still something particular about that when the music hits and it drops you into this area and says, hey, here's all the things you have to do. You can tackle them in any way that you want. You can go over here and do that objective first, or go over there and do that objective first. And then even the freedom past that is once you get into all these situations, the beauty of what makes the single player, the campaign of Halo so good is that you can also address any instance, any situation in completely different ways every single time you play, and keeps it fresh and exciting. And that's something that we see pay off still to this day if you look at Halo Infinite's campaign, and that's part of why I think that one is the best game of the series, but I digress. It was that initial response to the second level of Halo that first made me realize that it's like video games can be more than just entertainment. Like this is something different and unique. Fast forward a few years later, hitting middle school, Halo 2 is about to come out, you know. A couple buddies invited me over to their place, and they said, hey, you still have an Xbox, right? I was like, yeah, I've still got an Xbox. And they go, see if you can bring it over, because we're going to connect them all together so we can play some games. And I went, you can do that? I bring it over. We've got 4 TVs all set up, 4 Xboxes all connected through LAN cables, and they said, okay, now we're all gonna play Halo together. And I went, you can do that? That experience changed my life. The concept of sitting down and having like 16 people all playing the same video game together in one giant room. That was my first ever LAN party. I went on to have many more because it was like a drug. I had to have more of that. That feeling was amazing. To kind of have that community there, and I think community is the best word. They're the real thing that kind of puts both Halo and Melee together for me, because that's what kind of introduced me to this big competitive scene, and but it's also kind of this brotherhood. Of course, Halo 2 came out and completely revolutionized the way that we played video games online. For those that don't know, Halo 2 was actually one of the, if not the very first game to have matchmaking in it, because online games were still pretty fresh as far as consoles go, and they just kind of mimicked what PC games were doing and had server browsers. Halo 2 was kind of the first game where they're like, hey, you can just party up with your friends, hit a button, and we'll find opponents for you, like whoever. Games didn't do that yet. It changed everything, and so now you could replicate that experience of just grabbing some of your friends together and putting together a party, and then the game would give you people to play against, and you could just hang out and be together. And that's, I think, why Halo is still so important to me, is that it's one of those games where it's accessible enough for the people that don't really play a lot of video games. You have to play at least a few because FPS controls are difficult, but for those that aren't like super heavy into it, you can still get things like the rocket launcher or the sword to go in and have fun, because the chaos and the brilliance of the design of Halo allows for people to still kind of enjoy themselves even if they're not having a huge great time. But then there's tools enough to where if I want to sit down and master everything and become very, very good at the game, it's there and it's all good, and that's something that permeates across the entire series, because it's suddenly it's like all of my friends that I can think of past that, we've all played Halo together at some point. That's just kind of how all of my friendships went, is that Halo is always there. Speaking of games that are always there, let me tell you about a little game. It came out in 2002 called Super Smash Bros. Melee. You see, Super Smash Bros. Melee was the follow-up to the original N64 game, Super Smash Bros. But Melee was faster, it was quicker, it had more levels, more characters, and it had the golden touch of one Satoru Iwata. And that's always what works. You look at Pokemon Gold and Silver, he fixed those games. Look at Smash Bros. Melee, fixed the hell out of that game. But as we've learned years later, things like L canceling and wave dashing were actually 100% intended, just so they could get the game out on time. Like, yeah, here's these other things, whatever. Smash Bros. Melee is the perfect fighting game. Just gonna throw that out there right now. In fact, I'll go so far as to say I think Super Smash Bros. Melee is the greatest video game of all time. Now, granted, I'm extremely biased because I'm deep into the competitive scene of Melee, or at least I used to be. It's already a brilliant game to where people still play it even casually. I think Ultimate has kind of taken over the casual scene of Smash Brothers. But before Ultimate came out, I mean, you could go to any college campus and you'd find people playing Melee still, even over Smash Brothers Brawl, even over Smash 4. It was always Melee, because it's so easy to play, jump in, and have a fantastic time. There's so many tools to have an unbelievable time in the game. Here's Pokeballs, here's giant hammers, here's all of your favorite characters from your favorite childhood video games, and just mash them all. It's like taking a huge toy box full of toys and just combining everything and playing it all. The beauty of Melee is what happens when you go just a little bit deeper. That's when you start to see the brilliance of it, of how good it feels to move around in that game, how perfect the weight of everything is, how you realize when you combine these advanced mechanics like L canceling to cut off some of your in-lag to really chain together proper combos, and then the opportunities that open up when you learn how to consistently wave dash, and then suddenly you have the biggest toolbox in any fighting game in history. You see, more than any other fighting game, because most fighting games have combo lists for all their characters, and they're very extensive. If you look at a game like Tekken, for instance, there's literally the combo list of every character is over 200. The thing about most fighting games is that characters follow routes, which isn't bad, because the mind game of that becomes like trying to get in, so that way you can then start chaining all of these combos together. But all of these combos are kind of pre-made. The game tells you, hey, this is how you put all of these together. If fighting games are metal or classical, in fact, yeah, let's put it that way. Fighting games are classical music. Here's how to play everything and how to make it beautiful. It works. It's very rigid and precise. Melee is jazz. Melee says, hey, here's your tools. Get in there and go make something. The way that Melee flows is unlike anything that I've ever experienced in any other video game. You could take two Fox players, it's the same character, put them on against the same enemy on the same stage, and they'll look completely different, because the person playing them approaches the situations differently. You can't see two Ryus play completely wildly different, at least. You can see them take slightly different strategies, but you'll be like, oh, that's a Ryu. Whereas if you look at, let's take some of the top Melee players, right? If you could probably sit me down and say, okay, try and see who these two Foxes are. I would be like, well, that one is Mango, and that one is Mewtwo King, and I can tell because of the way that they approach these things. Like it's brilliant just in the way that it allows you to sit down and just create something with a character, figure it out for yourself, find your own style and work and adapt. And there's no other game like it. The reason I love that so much is because ever since the game came out, and I'm not kidding when I say this, ever since the game came out, Smash Brothers Melee has been prevalent in almost every single friendship that I have in my life since then. I played it. All of my friends in middle school played it. All of my friends in high school played it. All of the people that I worked with and went to college play it. My friend group, now that I'm an old ass man and almost 30, we all still play it. It's never gone away. That's what this is. This is Fox's Down B. This is Fox and Falco's Down B, and I got it tattooed on me because I love it so much. It's the perfect video game and never gets old. Fox only. Final destination. No items. I will play that until the end of time. But yeah, I think it all boils down to community. It's the fact that these things are so prevalent throughout the rest of my life is what has turned me into the gamer I am today. It's why I started streaming. It's because I love that feeling of everyone kind of, lugging their Xbox into a room so they can all play big team battle in Halo together, or sitting down with your best friend and being like, hey, we're gonna play Fox and Falco only on Melee for 4 hours, and we're just gonna hang out together and be with each other and interact in that way. That's the same way that I try to approach my streams, and that's why I love these two games in particular so much. if you like that sort of vibe, you can always catch me over on twitch.tv/LaPack92. And of course, I'm a host right here on a bunch of shared screen stuff as well, so please be sure to like, subscribe, follow, all of that good stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you appreciate that, and I'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much for watching this month's episode of Origins. Please remember to like the video, subscribe, and comment below what was the game that turned video games from a hobby into a passion for you. If you'd like to be a guest on the show in the future, please DM me, because we got a couple people lined up already, but love to have you on the show. So just let me know if you want to be on. And with that, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.